So I'm going to show you the clip from the film. It is a graphic clip, so be careful.
I do understand that this is quite brutal for a lot of people to see, and it seems very, very gruesome. This was a case of infanticide, and it is actually a reality that a lot of youngsters face when growing up in the wild.
Does that seem to you to be a faithful representation of what happens in the wild?
The music and the filters do make it more dramatic,
Yes.
but things like this do happen. Nature is so interesting and so fascinating as well. There's so much to learn, no matter what the topic is.
It can be a bit overwhelming, but that's why we have people like you. All right, I'm going to do a slate, a very basic slate. Not a biologist, episode 1, take 1. Hi, I'm Alex, and I am not a biologist. I love nature and wildlife, but honestly, sometimes I watch a film and I have no idea what's going on. At Terra Mater Studios, we film ambitious and exciting nature documentaries, and some of the animal behaviors that we film are just wild. I want to understand these behaviors and know why they happen and why they're important. So in this series, I sit down with people who really know their stuff and ask them the questions that come up when you watch these wildlife films, like, wait, why did that just happen? Today, we're talking about lions, more specifically lion cubs, and one of the hardest to watch behaviors in the wild. To help me understand what's really happening here, I'm joined by zoologist and science communicator, Caroline Reinwald.
Hi.
Caroline, tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you and why have we brought you here today?
So I'm a zoologist and science communicator. I work at the Vienna Zoo now, but I did my bachelor's degree and my master's degree in zoology at the University of Vienna, and that essentially brought me to the zoo. And I've always been super interested in science communication and communicating different zoological topics to people who are not biologists. So that's why I kind of made it my job.
Nice. I like that. That's good. And that's very useful for me here, particularly. So I've brought you here to talk about something very specific, an animal behavior from one of our films called The Bastard King. So I'm going to show you the clip from the film. It is a graphic clip, so be careful.
I do understand that this is quite brutal for a lot of people to see, and it seems very, very gruesome, but to me, this is a part of nature. This is like life and death are so closely intertwined in nature, and this is actually a reality that a lot of youngsters face when growing up in the wild. And this is a real threat for them.
What is this behavior called that we see here?
So this was a case of infanticide, and it occurs when an adult male of one species kills the offspring of the same species.
Does that seem to you to be a faithful representation of what happens in the wild?
Well, I mean, of course, the music and the filters do make it more dramatic,
Yes.
but things like this do happen.
So you wouldn't say it's a rare behavior? It's a fairly standard?
It essentially happens oftentimes when a new male takes over a pride and he chases off the dominant male. He will then kill off the offspring of this dominant male to pass on his own genes to the next generation to mate with the females that previously had cubs.
So it's all about passing on genetics and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
then?
it's mostly about reproduction.
Yeah. Is it like a population control thing, or is it really just like, I want to pass my genetics on?
It is mostly about passing on his own genes or even eliminating future competitors in the case of male cubs, for instance.
So it's both male and female cubs that get targeted in this way. It's just the offspring in general?
It's just the offspring in general, yes.
How is it that these male lions can actually tell which cubs are theirs and which aren't?
So usually the males associate the cubs by their mother. So when the cubs are accompanied by a female that the male knows or that he has mated with earlier, there's a quite big possibility that those are his own cubs.
And so follow-up question, how do they tell the mothers apart if there are multiple lionesses in the pride?
So lions have a very distinctive roar that communicates a lot about their individual identity, but also like size and fitness and things like that. But also smell is a big part of it.
Wow, I had no idea the roar was so important for identification. I had no idea.
Yeah, roars play a big role also in communication within the pride, who's where and.
Wow. What kind of roars are there? Is there like warning roars and stuff for like danger as well? I don't know.
There was actually a recent study that showed that lions have like two distinctive roars. There's this one like movie-esque roar that everybody knows, the one that's like really big and loud and flashy. And that communicates a lot about the individual, and it may be used for contact with pride members, for instance, but also to mark territory and to scare off potential intruders. And then there's intermediary roar, but they're not exactly sure what the purpose of this roar is yet. So something else to still be discovered.
Wow. I feel like lions are so much in the cultural memory, right? Like across history, loads of cultures have kind of revered lions as royalty, as, beacons of certain religious things. Do you find it difficult to communicate the reality of lions versus maybe the pop culture perception, especially with, big animated films and things like that?
I think it makes it easier sometimes because people are super interested in lions because they're this big flashy species and they're a flagship species for the environment that they live in.
Is it only male lions that perform this behavior? Or do female lions also kill cubs of rivals?
It does actually happen that females also kill cubs, but it's a very different context. So females will actually sometimes kill their own cubs, but for very different reasons. So when there's a lot of stress and the female is fighting to survive, let's say there's very limited resources available, or the cubs are sick or injured or wounded, or were born malformed, and investing into reproduction wouldn't pay off. Sometimes they do abandon these cubs or even kill them and eat them themselves to preserve natural resources.
Wow. We see that as so brutal, as we mentioned at the top, but it is just a fact of life. Why do you think it is that people react this way to nature?
I think because we have a very different way of living. We have food readily available to us all the time, 24/7. But in the wild, animals have to fight for the resources that they need. And if there's a cub that will no longer make it to adulthood due to different reasons, we might not know the cub is being sick. But in this case, it pays off to kill off the cub and consume it in order to gain resources rather than raising it.
In this film, we see the mother, to us, it seems like grief, right? But you mentioned how we humans see animals and how maybe our society is very different from the animal world. Is that just us putting our emotions on the lion, or is the lion actually expressing some sort of sorrow or grief in this moment?
I would say it's very, very difficult to tell because we can't look into what an animal might be feeling. And of course, we are portraying our own emotions onto it. So I wouldn't say it's grief in the sense that we experience it, but it's always very difficult to tell. And that's why I try to refrain from saying what an animal might be feeling, because we simply don't know.
Yeah, so that's an important part of being a zoologist is recognizing where the human world ends and the animal world of expression, at least, begins. There is a divide there, I guess. I think that's so interesting that there's record for resource reasons of female lions killing their own cubs and not male lions for presumably the same sort of thing. I guess it's this idea of passing on genetics is like the most important thing. So letting those male cubs get to adulthood so they can do the same thing is important as well to them. In some sense, and I say important to them, but it's a biological function.
The females have a much larger investment into reproduction than the males do. Because the females are nursing the young, they have to take care of them, they have to protect them. And this is something that they actually they have to balance their energy and see what pays off and what doesn't.
You touch on nursing there as well. And what is the relationship between a mother and its cubs like? Like, how long does that last for lions?
So for lions, they typically stay with the pride until they're about 2 years old. And the females actually stay in the pride. And the males will then leave and join maybe other males and form a coalition. Or they might wander around alone and then try to find a pride of their own where they can overthrow the dominant male.
And what's the difference between taking those two paths, like finding your bros and going off and forming a coalition, or going to seek a pride?
I can't say for sure, but it might depend on the region, what the prey availability is like, what the terrain is like, if the males maybe get along or not. Oftentimes, brothers will be together, so if they're related to one another, they do stay together. And sometimes there's also brothers who who are in charge of one pride together.
Wow.
So sometimes you have multiple males that own a pride or that have a pride.
Okay,
so there's different factors at play.
So why has this behavior developed from an evolutionary perspective? Like, why is it that this is relevant? Is it just because the ultimate goal is passing on genetics, or is there another explanation here?
So there's actually a lot of different explanations as to why animals sometimes kill offspring of the same species. With lions, for instance, it's the sexual selection hypothesis, stating that the males want to secure mating rights with the females and pass on their own genes. But there's also other reasons. For instance, if resources are scarce and if space is very limited or care is limited, sometimes parents will kill off unrelated offspring in order to secure more resources for their own offspring. But sometimes females will actually also kill off offspring of other females in order to secure more help for their own offspring, because sometimes females that lose their offspring or that haven't reproduced, such as in prairie dogs, for instance, they actually help other females raise their young.
Do you think it's important to show people the reality of that?
Yes, absolutely. It's really important to show nature as it is in all its forms. We often have this very romanticized version of nature where the cheetah and the antelope become friends, but this is not what happens in nature. We have to see it as it is and try to stop inflicting our emotions upon it and view it through our lens, because nature works the way it works, and it's really, really important to see it as it is in order to understand it and to conserve it.
I totally agree. From someone who is not a biologist, I understand this stuff better when I see it, and hearing about it can be confusing, but seeing it and then having a great explanation for why this happens makes me appreciate that reality even more.
That's why nature is so interesting and so fascinating as well. There's so much to learn, no matter what the topic is.
It's definitely true. It can be a bit overwhelming, but that's why we have people like you who do a great job of it. So thank you, Caroline, for helping me and all of us understand what we're really seeing. What I take away from today's conversation is this: nature isn't cruel and it isn't kind. It just works the way it works. And sometimes understanding our reality is uncomfortable, but it also makes the natural world even more fascinating. If you like this episode, feel free to subscribe, and we'll see you next time for our next Not a Biologist episode. And if you want to watch the full-length interview, plus get access to much more behind-the-scenes content, you can now find us on Patreon. Thanks for watching.